This video is sponsored by Surfshark, more on that later. Shane Dawson is one of the most discussed YouTubers ever, though that's hardly a surprise when you remember that he spent the first half of his career piling up more controversies than you can count.
I don't know, I mean they hurt people, like you wouldn't want to be by one.
We already said niggers.
And the second half desperately trying to escape that image.
I'm gonna start by saying, I am not a f***ing pedophile. I, Shane Yaw, my real name, go on record saying I am not a f***ing pedophile.
Because of my videos, now every choice I make, people are going to jump right to racist.
Those apologies suck. I don't know who that person is anymore.
And while the details of his past have been retreaded 1,000 times, there is a very specific element of Shane Dawson's time as a creator that I think is just as notable. See, while Shane isn't known as one of YouTube's most intelligent creators, he has mastered a unique skill that he arguably invented. A skill that allowed him to succeed where thousands of other creators have failed. Where since 2008, Shane has managed to repeatedly reinvent both his content and image in order to stay at the cutting edge of YouTube. Or at least he was able to until the past came back to bite him. Which leads one to wonder, how exactly did Shane pull this off? Why is he so desperate to remain relevant on YouTube, and why is this so impressive? Well, for starters, just look at YouTube's history. Creators typically find a specific format that both viewers and the algorithm reward, so they stick to it for sustained growth. But this is often a double-edged sword, because if the creator keeps that format running for too long, it grows stale. Or YouTube's culture and algorithm will move on to favoring something else.
When do you abandon a format that's working that well?
Every year we've had formats that do really well, but if I just, if I kept doing the formats that were crushing back in 2020, I wouldn't be where I am now. Eventually they would fizzle out. I'm a big believer in ending on a format while it's not too old.
But on the other hand, if those creators start making changes to their content, they'd risk alienating both viewers and the algorithm. Like, if no one knows what to expect from a channel, it makes it harder to support, or people just won't like the new format. So a lot of YouTubers have historically responded to this by starting a second channel where they are more experimental, which makes a lot of sense. If your experiment blows up in your face, then your original channel can remain a strong source of income. And on the off chance these risks do pay off, you're either left with two sources of income or the option to jump ship entirely. This allows the creator to either try out a format that requires less effort and is therefore more profitable, or to try a new genre altogether. And we've seen this pay off with creators like Smosh, Tobuscus, and the Theorist channels. But Shane was one of the first to do this and is arguably the most successful at pulling this off. See, for a long time, short, easy to digest videos were the lifeblood of YouTube. I mean, hell, some of the first viral videos were two teenagers lip-syncing various theme songs. So in 2008, Shane started posting sketches to the channel ShaneDawsonTV, where he developed his trademark edgy, shock-based humor. Now, of course, it's worth saying that it was a different time. Like, back then, YouTube was essentially the Wild West. If you watch a Smosh sketch from 2007, it's wildly different than what they produce today. Hell, Philip DeFranco straight up wiped all of his old videos to prevent anything problematic from resurfacing. There's also iDubbbz, who famously denounced his most famous series due to his reliance on offensive humor.
I don't think they some of these videos were edgy. I think they were just outright cruel.
But Shane pushed this idea to its limit for longer than anyone else, relying on blackface, slurs, offensive rhetoric, and gross imagery as the basis of his humor. In short, Shane became known for finding whatever the line was in comedy and trampling over it. And this strategy served Shane really well for years, with him becoming the third most subscribed to YouTuber by early 2010. But as he entered the 2010s, Shane's style presented quite a few issues. Though that might be putting it lightly, seeing as how Shane is still dealing with the fallout of these hurdles over a decade later, which you'll see. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor, Surfshark. Look, when using the internet, there are hidden threats behind every corner, and that's where Surfshark comes in. Surfshark is an all-in-one digital fortress. From VPNs to block unwanted snoopers to an antivirus that keeps your devices free of malware, Surfshark has you covered. See, when using public Wi-Fi, you often risk bad actors trying to access your information. That's why Surfshark's VPN shields your data on public Wi-Fi by encrypting your internet connection, protecting against all kinds of cyber threats. This security is crucial when accessing sensitive information on unsecured networks. Surfshark also allows you to bypass geographic restrictions, allowing you to access international streaming libraries to get more for your money. For example, The Office is no longer available on Netflix in the US, but it is available in Canada. So Surfshark's VPN can trick Netflix into thinking you're in Canada and thus allow you to watch The Office. This can save you big on subscriptions if you're only interested in specific titles across different streamers. This also helps with content that may be censored in certain areas. And for those who juggle multiple devices, just one subscription is enough to cover them all. No device limit, just total protection. And Surfshark is offering you guys a great deal. Just scan this QR code or visit surfshark.com surfshark.deal/Robins for an additional 4 free months when you sign up. It's a great way to support the channel while enjoying a freer, safer, and cleaner internet experience. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's really nothing to lose. Thanks to Surfshark for helping keep the lights on. Now back to the video. So what exactly were these changes that were forcing Shane to stay on his toes? For one, YouTube was slowly basing the platform on watch time over other metrics, meaning shorter videos would be at a considerable disadvantage, both in terms of how many views they could expect, but also for how much money they could generate. And the shift has been especially devastating for sketches for 3 main reasons. One, they're far more expensive to produce than most other formats. Sketches often require actors, a camera operator, and a sound person at the minimum, not to mention props, costume, and location. Whereas for many other formats like commentary, let's plays, and podcasts, they can be done with mounted equipment on a stationary set. Yeah, there's a reason that this is how I film, and it's not exactly because I'm rich. Secondly, since sketches are normally under 5 minutes, they would be unable to run mid-roll ads and thus be harder to monetize.
That's why you don't see sketch comedy on YouTube.
Thousands and thousands of dollars, so much time and energy, huge production schedule
all
in
for
one day.
A 4-minute video that if you get 1 million views on it, you're lucky to make a couple $1,000s.
Yeah,
and
that barely covers.
That doesn't cover the cost.
That doesn't cover the production costs.
And third, as YouTube became more mainstream, creators have faced increasing levels of scrutiny, with brands becoming less willing to associate their ads with controversial content. So for comedy, a genre that naturally pushes societal boundaries, you risk videos being deemed too controversial for ads.
Nowadays, many of our YouTube videos are deemed controversial and don't make any money. Controversial can mean anything as small as, say, implied nudity.
So as YouTube continued adopting these changes, it created a strong demand for personality-driven content that could be produced quickly. This took many forms, such as gaming, let's plays, and reaction videos, but vlogging in particular started to dominate YouTube. Whether it was creators taking viewers along for the day or sitting down to chat like a friend, people loved it. And at around the same time, Shane was having somewhat of an identity crisis on YouTube, where he was trying to expand into various other kinds of content with limited success. This started with his second channel, ShaneDawsonTV 2, which heavily featured bonus content such as behind-the-scenes footage. Meanwhile, he started trying to shake up the content he was producing on ShaneDawsonTV. For example, this included music. What started with low-budget parodies eventually turned into well-produced original songs. And these found quite a bit of success, but mostly within his audience. None of the songs were notable beyond that. You see, in a lot of ways, the early 2010s feel like Shane trying to figure out what would be his bridge to mainstream success. But instead, he discovered the first step to making his YouTube career everlasting. See, in 2010, he started the YouTube channel Shane and eventually began posting daily vlogs that showcased more of him as a media personality rather than a creative. And the main point that I'm making here is how skilled Shane is at jumping between different forms of content, right? But at first, he wasn't. It took a while for Shane's vlogs to start taking off, though the same could actually be said about his sketches. While the Shane Dawson TV channel was basically an overnight success, it wasn't actually Shane's first channel.
That first year after high school, I was making videos with my friends, putting them up on YouTube, nobody was watching.
Was this your current channel, or was it another channel?
No. This was like Shane Yaw. It's not there anymore.
It took me about 2 years to get a video with 100,000 views.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Because during the early years of Shane's career, his tenacity was one of his greatest assets. He wouldn't always crack the code for success right away, but he would keep up his various pursuits for far longer than most. And that wasn't his only advantage. As simple as it sounds, Shane also proved that he was very willing to learn. You see, a lot of YouTubers tend to view their strategies in a vacuum, where they see what works for them, so they keep doing it without keeping a pulse on how other creators are finding success. This can be seen especially with this era of vloggers. Simply put, most of them no longer have large viewerships, but if you were to look at their content as that declined, the creators often weren't making changes to what they were doing. They just kept running into a wall expecting a different outcome. All the while, the demand for that content kept decreasing, and by the time they realized it was time for a change, their audiences moved on to the content that was now in demand. Though it of course goes without saying that when talking about the content strategy of past creators, it is much easier to point out mistakes with over a decade of hindsight, as opposed to having to figure out an unprecedented career path in the moment. Safe to say, I would not trade places. Anyway. So when YouTube was prioritizing short, bite-sized videos, Shane was able to find success. But as watch time became more important, Shane decided to cast out another net, taking inspiration from the new creators taking off.
Does this next generation of YouTube stars, do they pressure you to create and push the boundaries even more?
Yes and no. I think they pressure me to create more stuff because I wasn't doing daily videos until a few years ago when like all the young ones started doing daily. And I'm like, okay, now I got to keep up.
Even better, he was willing to fully commit to content that he wasn't necessarily passionate about, but saw was successful.
Like a year ago, I don't know if I would have said I was that proud of like eating pizza on camera. You know, it was fun.
And with that, you have much of the basis for how Shane evolves his content. He's good at observing how other creators find success, he's willing to take a gamble without an immediate return, and he's willing to put effort into content regardless of how passionate he is about it. And these are all traits that can make someone very adaptable. Shane also started noticing that collabs were becoming more prevalent on YouTube, where creators would often make videos together in order to exchange exposure to their subscribers and hopefully siphon off of each other. And while some of these dynamics were based on close friendships that had formed throughout their time making content, plenty of creators would just meet for the sole purpose of collaborating.
I'm just collabing with my friends, though I only know their screen names.
So in 2013, Shane took exactly what worked for his sketches and applied it to his vlogs. He adopted the strategy of other creators, but took it to the extreme in order to stand out. Enter Joey Graceffa. See, until this point, Shane mostly worked with people he was friends with. He kept a fairly tight circle, but this year marked him starting to branch out and become part of the larger creator community. And from the looks of it, creators were happy to have him. Since Shane was kind of YouTube's bad boy, he was a great way for YouTubers to prevent their videos from getting stale.
No, so how does that make you feel to make these videos with me? Because I always thought you were more like clean cut.
Honestly, when you vlog every day, like, you gotta spice it up a little bit. And
wait, am I the spice?
You're the spice.
What kind of spice do you think I am?
And expanding his circle did wonders. Instead of doing everything solely his way, he was starting to learn and observe how other YouTubers were operating up close.
You're very good at daily vlogging, and I am not.
Yes, you are.
I'm good at making things funny, but I'm not very good at being like real because I think I'm boring. And you don't care if you think you're boring or not. You film everything, and I am not confident enough to do that.
And while Shane began befriending all kinds of YouTubers, him and Joey became somewhat of a duo. And in true Shane Dawson fashion, he took the collaborations that had worked for thousands of creators and took it further than any of them were willing to. See, while many YouTubers would humor fans shipping them, Shane and Joey steered right into it and found a lot of success by doing so.
I mean, you have to kind of become friends when you kiss somebody.
I know.
Have you kissed any of your other ships? In videos or in
not in videos.
And then me and Joey decided after that video, Joey became kind of a big ship.
Yeah.
And now we're just making really uncomfortable videos that literally every time I make one, Lisa looks at me and goes, I mean, just already on camera.
Oh my God.
You might as well. Because that's where it's heading. And I'm like, well, you know what? If it hits 2 million views,
or
really
if people will watch and that's what they want, then we will
God.
give them what they want.
I mean, just look at the difference in his vlogs during 2012 compared to 2013. 2012 still saw mostly his personal friends making appearances. It felt like Shane Dawson's bonus channel, so its success was limited to existing fans. But in 2013, suddenly all kinds of YouTubers were making appearances, and the channel itself had branding more in line with other vloggers. And this is a trend we've seen across YouTube, where creators treating their second channel as an independent entity, rather than a bonus channel, allows it to find even greater success since it can appeal to a much larger audience. So it took years, but Shane adapting his content to have a larger appeal eventually paid off. And by late 2013, the Shane channel was starting to pull similar numbers to ShaneDawsonTV, only vlogs are far easier to produce and were starting to be far more profitable. But with all of this, there was a catch. Remember how I said that one of Shane's strengths was that he was able to commit himself to content he wasn't passionate about? Well, that was kind of misleading. Instead, it would be more accurate to say that Shane is very good at seeing the big picture. You see, by 2013, YouTube was still in many ways an experiment. Hell, just a few years later, the platform risked going under thanks to the adpocalypse.
Some inflammatory articles are posted about how major brands are being advertised on top of very vile YouTube videos. A bunch of advertisers fearing backlash removed their ads entirely from YouTube, and during this period, every YouTuber saw a decrease in revenue. Also, Google's valuation dropped by like $750 million in a day. How big?
So no one knew how long careers on YouTube could last or the potential limits of its content. So while now it's more common to see people view YouTube as a long-term career,
this is what I'm doing to the day I die. I don't care. Like, I love this more than anything. Nothing's ever brought me a fraction of the joy.
Back then, it was largely seen as a temporary gig that, if you were lucky, would lead to something in Hollywood.
If you really, really go back to it, is because we thought that one channel wasn't just gonna survive, right?
Yeah.
So when 2015 came around and game theory had been around for 4-ish years, we were like, okay, well, you know, This is YouTube. The maximum lifespan of a channel is 5 years. So we got 1 good year left, and we were like,
launch a new channel.
Let's launch a new channel.
But lo and behold, it's like, but we kept it alive, and it's still going and stronger than ever.
But for Shane, that was kind of how he always viewed it.
I mean, the book out today, you've directed a movie. I mean, come on.
No, it's amazing. I mean, YouTube is a great way to, get your stuff out there, uncensored, do whatever you want, and hopefully lead to the next thing. But I mean, eventually I want to just direct movies and that's it. And, use YouTube as a way to promote the movies and keep in touch with the audience.
While many creators stumble into the career accidentally, Shane's ambitions were always in filmmaking.
That was my dream my whole life. I didn't stumble upon it. A lot of YouTubers, they're like, oh, randomly my video went viral and now I'm making videos, and they have no passion for it.
No.
So then they go away because they're burnt the hell out.
So he saw his sketches as a way to show off what he can do and hopefully open some doors. And then the vlogs were a way to expose him to an even larger audience and hopefully open even more doors. And all of that worked. By late 2013, Shane Dawson was doing better than ever. And the next few years started to feel like Shane's farewell tour to YouTube, where in the same way he transitioned from sketches to vlogging, he would seamlessly transition from YouTuber to mainstream celebrity. But instead, this era marked his first big stumble. You see, by 2013, Shane was starting to cast nets outside of just YouTube. So in 2013, he started the podcast Shane and Friends, initially co-hosted by his then producer, Lauren Schnipper. And here, Shane would invite various guests, mostly from YouTube, to interview and talk about content creation, which was a great opportunity for him to expand his network even further. And this podcast was a huge success on day one.
Even though we, for some reason, became the #1 podcast
on the internet.
We are not boosting our production value at all. So you guys helped us become the #1 podcast, and that's crazy. And I'm sure all the other podcast people are very confused.
I know. Trust us, we are as well.
But you know what? We're not going to let it bother us because we're just going to try to do what we do here.
Which is...
I don't really know yet.
Right.
And at around the same time, Shane actually managed to sell a show to NBC.
The YouTube juggernaut is potentially joining the likes of Rhett and Link, Fred, and the Annoying Orange in YouTube to television leaps.
NBC or NPC has put in development a single camera comedy called Losing It.
And it will be a semi-autobiographical workplace comedy set in a weight loss center, mirroring Dawson's past at Jenny Craig, where he was fired for vlogging at work.
But none of that compared to Not Cool, because after years, Shane had finally made it to Hollywood. In 2014, he announced that he would be making his directorial debut with the feature-length film Not Cool.
So there you guys go. That is the first trailer for my first movie ever. Oh my God, I have so many feelings. I am so excited for you guys to see this movie. I am so proud of it, and you guys are going to love it. It'll most likely be in theaters, and it'll be probably on demand and maybe on TV, and it'll be a lot of places for you guys to see it.
Which, fun fact, the female lead for Not Cool is now a huge voice actress, known for playing Makoto Nijima, V from Cyberpunk, and a whole slew of other roles.
Now, Johanna! Open Gate of the Celestial Spirit!
Let's get him, Chun.
But this film was being produced as part of the reality show The Chair, which sought to document an ambitious experiment in filmmaking. What would happen if you gave two novice filmmakers with unique styles the same screenplay and resources and told them to turn it into a movie? Though it's worth noting that while the premise was really interesting, the execution of this idea was kinda stupid. See, the winner of this contest would receive $250,000 in the hopes of supporting the next up-and-coming filmmaker, but the winner would be decided by a public vote online. Only problem is, the two contestants were Shane Dawson, who had millions of fans, and A.M. Lucas, who was a complete unknown. Like, almost half of the voters were eliminated for failing a quiz meant to verify that the voter had seen both films, likely because Shane's fans were bombarding the vote. So while Shane won the contest, Lucas's film is universally considered the better project. So going into 2015, it seemed like Shane was in his final days as a YouTuber. He finally got to show millions of people what he could do as a feature-length filmmaker, got even greater exposure by winning The Chair, kept his YouTube output pretty consistent, had a pretty successful podcast, and had a book on the horizon that would go on to be a New York Times bestseller. And at this point, I think it would be fair to say that he had developed somewhat of a chip on his shoulder. I mean, just from one interview during this period, Shane says a lot about where his head was at, like directly saying that he didn't want to be seen as a YouTuber anymore and was getting ready to leave the platform.
I'm not just a YouTuber who talks and vlogs. I'm a director, and I'm a filmmaker, and I'm an actor, and I'm a writer. I wrote the book myself, no ghostwriter.
Johnny Depp and Jennifer Lawrence, kids don't even like them as much as they love YouTube stars.
It's depressing. Well, listen, it's awesome, but on the flop side of that, when I was starting, I wanted to be a director. I wanted to make movies. Like, that was my goal. Now you hear kids, and they're like, I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. And I'm like, what? No, why? It's terrible. But I mean, eventually I want to just direct movies and that's it. And, use YouTube as a way to promote the movies and keep in touch with the audience.
While also somehow looking down at the next generation of YouTubers, but still feeling that they owed him respect as a YouTuber.
I used to get really annoyed at P. Diddy when he'd say things like, I started this. And I'd be like, no, you didn't. But he did. And that's how I feel. I'm like, I started this. I feel like these new young YouTubers, they don't look at the older YouTubers and be like, wow, thank those people. Like those, like you see them at VidCon or whatever and they ignore us. And it's like, really? You guys should be kind of like thanking us because without us, you would not exist.
In fact, I think what really sums this up was Shane's answer to what his favorite video that he had ever made was after 7 years of producing hundreds of them.
I think that the one that I was most excited about was, this isn't even a video, but I, put my movie trailer up last year, and that was like a huge deal for me. I was crying as I was uploading it. I mean, it was a big deal.
But hey, maybe he was just ready to move on. But I just spent a bunch of time talking about Shane's 2-year hot streak off of YouTube, so how exactly could Shane's movie have been his first big stumble? It led to the start of a very particular pattern, where Shane would launch into a new pursuit. It would initially be incredibly successful due to his viewership, but then would quickly stagnate as it failed to appeal to the masses. For example, Shane's second book from 2016 is promoted as the instant #1 New York Times bestseller, which it was for a couple of weeks, at which point it quickly plummeted down the charts. Then there's his film Not Cool, which is never discussed unless it's someone making fun of it.
To be honest, I've watched this film 4 times now, and I still don't actually have a full concept of what the is going on in this movie. I am genuinely baffled at how terrible this film is.
That show he sold to NBC, it was ultimately never produced, and his podcast started off at #1, yes, but as podcasts became more mainstream, he was quickly overlooked in favor of the competition. But what was the problem? He had shown on YouTube that he was basically a chameleon at making content, so what was he missing to achieve success? Well, for mainstream projects, it can be pretty important to have mass appeal, which Shane struggled with finding, because Shane had figured out how to appeal to the YouTube audience, but seemed to not understand that the people consuming traditional media wouldn't be entertained by the same content.
He's been making his comedy for a specific audience, and he's catered to them, and it's how he's been able to grow his brand. Does that brand translate into a longer format story?
I know it's what Shane has done in a lot of his YouTube content, but this isn't YouTube. And this is where we're talking about the differentiation between making a feature film and making an extended YouTube video.
But what's perhaps more important is your reputation in the industry. You see, I actually have a theory as someone who watched his content at the time and stopped being a fan specifically because of Not Cool and The Chair. And in the 10 years since, I've actually gotten my degree in film, I've worked in the industry, and I've had multiple mentors with decades of experience. So with all of that said, I truly believe that Shane got himself blacklisted from Hollywood. And I think that's the reason that, spoilers, Shane has since basically given up on his dreams of Hollywood despite how hostile YouTube now is towards him.
And hey, Shane Dawson is here, up for Creator of the Year. Spent half his career in blackface. Huh? Nobody remembers Shanae in this room? Okay.
As a black creator myself, who's essentially grown up on the platform, I had a front row seat to the rise of ShaneDawsonTV. And I just gotta say, it was so refreshing to see someone reach such heights who looked just like me. Representation matters.
Now, I just threw a lot at you that at first might not seem related to his strategy as a YouTuber, but I truly believe that Shane's time on YouTube can be separated into 2 distinct eras that are split by these events, and it is impossible to fully understand the choices he's made over the past decade without understanding how badly he sabotaged himself. So with all of that said, why am I so convinced that not only was Shane blacklisted from Hollywood, but that it has next to nothing to do with his many other controversies? I think it comes down to Shane's behavior both creatively and professionally while producing his movie. Now, as blunt as this is going to sound, Shane basically turned both The Chair and Not Cool into The Shane Dawson Show. What do I mean? Well, for starters, the assignment was for Shane to take a screenplay and direct it. That's it.
And so I've always been fascinated by trying to set up a situation where you could actually see how 2 different directors would take the same material and turn it into 2 separate movies. So we created rules, R-rated or less. It has to be 85 minutes or longer. They have to stick to the plot of the script, and I asked them to keep the character names so that the audience could follow that this version of Scott is the same character originally.
But instead, Shane completely rewrote the script.
I'm not gonna lie, when I found out that We had to direct something from a script that we had not written ourselves. I did not sleep for about a week. I've never directed anything that I haven't written, and to have something handed to me was terrifying.
Just based on like the amount of rewrites Shane is doing, just with the WGA, just the rules, like I've spoken to his attorney a bit about it. I don't really understand when is it decided if he's done enough that warrants A, credit, B, he has to join WGA, like all these things, because we have this parameters now.
If we're talking about you having notes or dialogue polish or jokes, that is something that is sort of par for the course. And
so we're gonna pretend like everything I've done to the script so far.
We're not pretending
was
anything.
Just a note, because I rewrote every sentence of dialogue.
I don't think that's true. Every sentence of dialogue.
I mean,
but B,
I think I rewrote it. Like
But
I
he's
sent
had
him
them
a
to
rewritten
but
script.
He's mentioned that he might want some kind of co-writing credit on this movie, and I have to tell you that's absolutely ridiculous. Shane contributed, to the final screenplay. He had thoughts, he had ideas, and he was certainly involved. But he was never contracted as a writer on this. And this is why the WGA, it's why they have guidelines. We work together as a writer and a director. If you're not allowed to do that without a director trying to grab credit, you're in a lot of trouble.
Like, yes, it's normal for directors to make edits to scripts, of course, but once Shane was done with it, it was almost unrecognizable.
It was originally written as a dramedy, definitely not a comedy. It was definitely a lot of drama. And I said, let's save that drama for the mama. Let's bring in the poop jokes.
You're not tracking what is ultimately going to become
Which is what I like. I don't want it to be a romantic comedy.
In other words, Shane was hired to make a specific movie, was given $1 million to make that movie, but instead just took the money and did whatever he wanted with it. And I'm just getting started here. Simply put, Shane brought the mindset of a YouTuber that answers to no one and brought it to his set. In other words, Shane refused to accept that filmmaking is a collaborative process where, yes, sometimes you need to compromise.
learning to work with a writer is a skill. Saying, no, I don't like that dialogue, let's change this or whatever, that's your work as a director.
He was surrounded with people who were desperately trying to help him make the film work, and his reactions would range from blowing them off to outright screaming at them. For example, the script contained a lot of segments and jokes that were either offensive, really gross, or both, so his producers desperately tried to tell him that it was limiting who would be willing to work with him. Here's how he responded to that.
I'm not taking anything out of the movie to please a bunch of fucking out-of-work actors in Pittsburgh who should be lucky to get an audition for a feature film. I am not catering to that fucking market.
I agree with you. I actually
Thank you.
I agree with you.
That is bullshit.
I think
no director has ever taken anything out of a movie to get somebody to audition. So I don't quite understand the logic of being picky when you have no fucking job.
In case you missed that was a novice filmmaker sticking to his principles, talking in a disgusting manner about novice actors for sticking to their principles. He also refused to hear notes by people who were previewing the movie.
And what's the big deal? So you take a note, now you look like a director who can take a note and that you can compromise and people will want to work with you. You are very confused. You think notes are negative. Do you think that's going to make you look bad? Which it does not. That's the disconnect right now.
Yeah, but
it doesn't make you look bad.
It's annoying. I know it doesn't make you look bad, but it's annoying because, like that moment should have been the moment where it made me, where I look good and we look good.
You do.
I want to, do test screenings because I know it's part of the process, but I really don't care. Like, I don't know. I just don't care. Like, I care because it's like, oh, great notes, but I respect notes from you guys and people, whatever, but like, as far as a whole group of people, I don't fucking care. It's like, we all know it's a good movie. The best case scenario is they agree, worst case scenario is they disagree, and we're like, nah, it's still a good movie.
I'm, if nothing else, kind of sad because as it seems right now, Shane's not really interested in hearing the notes. And that makes me really sad. I think it's a missed and wasted opportunity.
Like, these are people with far more experience than Shane, desperately trying to find any kind of compromise, yet he outright refuses. Like, he's a first-time filmmaker talking like he's Christopher Nolan. And to be honest, I think it's because Shane viewed his years on YouTube as him having paid his dues for the industry, so he earned the right to do things his way.
I have been on this whole YouTube grind for 8 years now, and it's every day, literally making a new video every day, making podcasts. I'm ready to do a movie. I'm ready to do something bigger than just the internet.
When in reality, the very premise of the competition is that the producers were gambling on Shane, meaning he was lucky to even be there. And look, I understand that reality shows intentionally edit things to be deceptive, but it's hard to think of a context where him screaming at his crew like that would be okay, or how they would be able to get all of these exact quotes. But when it was all said and done, Shane stuck to his guns as a creative and was completely eviscerated for it. Like, completely, with a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the LA Times' Robert Abel calling it an abyss, an insult to the craft of filmmaking, storytelling, and entertainment in almost every way, and with the New York Times' Neil Genslinger saying no one involved with it should ever be allowed to work in the movies again. In fact, Zachary Quinto and Neil Dodson were the executive producers of both films and The Chair, and they both went on to pull their producer credits from Not Cool and openly campaigned against it for the competition.
What would your reaction be if more people go see Shane's movie, or Shane wins The Chair? You know what I mean? I think what does that say to you?
Maybe it's a kind of righteous indignation about the fact that I really wouldn't be surprised. I cannot associate myself in name to that kind of content. I just can't do it.
Zach has decided to take his name off of Shane's film and not participate in the promotion of that. I believe I'm going to do the same thing.
In case you missed that, yeah, Shane Dawson managed to become sworn enemies with Spock.
So I'd rather have your guys' notes versus like Zachary Quinto, who probably won't like this movie because of this and that. I would rather have your guys' notes versus somebody who doesn't like the movie at all.
I'm angry, actually. I'm angry. The fact that $850,000 got put into making something that was so egregiously offensive. And not only the material, but actually the fact that $850,000 was put into making that. It made me angry. And it's not something in any version or by any stretch of my imagination that I can ever put my name on or be associated with.
So as a director, Shane made it clear that he wasn't able to work with others, but as a writer, he arguably did more damage. You see, until now, you could have argued that Shane's shock-based humor was just a marketing campaign. It was only a way to get people talking about him. But after Not Cool, it became clear that that's all Shane was capable of as a writer. Like, this man fought for his life to include a scene of a homeless man eating his own feces. I am not joking.
It's been mentioned many, many times, the eating is a problem for people. So if we just like lose that, and perhaps this next week might go easily. I'm just saying.
I'm not taking anything out of the movie to please a bunch of fucking out-of-work actors in Pittsburgh who should be lucky to get an audition for a feature film. I am not catering to that fucking market. Changing the movie is not the answer, so what's the other answer?
And then from an acting perspective, not only did he cast his then girlfriend in a supporting role, but Shane casted himself in the movie, and not as a cameo, but instead as the male lead who's known for being super good looking and was the most popular guy in high school and who everyone wanted to sleep with. No, I'm still not joking.
Oh my god, you know you're attractive, it's annoying.
Wow, amazing hair and I'm attractive?
God, I'm not into you. I mean, would I have sex with you? Yeah, probably, but that does not mean that I'm into you.
Ever since I heard about this project, I just assumed that I would be in the movie.
As written, the character of Scott was intended to be charming, really good looking, an athlete, very successful, kind of always had everything come to him. Shane is just not the athlete golden boy actor for that role, so he's a little bit different. And in doing the rewrite, we tweaked it to make it more like Shane.
And like, I get that he wanted to experience both directing and acting, but it is really bold to think that you can succeed at both during your debut film.
I do want to talk about what your process was to decide to put yourself in the role. Of course, I want to support it, but I do want to talk about the unique challenges that go with that.
There's so much I really want to do as this character that I couldn't imagine not playing it.
And this decision turned into a real problem for Shane because, in practice, there wasn't a central leader of the set, like a director is supposed to be, who can ensure that Shane's performance was in line with his goals as a filmmaker.
That's difficult because he's the director, but he needs direction. No, but he knows. He's struggling with that, I think.
It's always tricky on a set to figure out when and how to give a director notes.
He says it's confusing for him because he has one take on it, Lauren's giving him another take on it, Corey had another take on it, and so it's sort of confusing him as to what to do.
Plus, in general, he wasn't the most receptive to taking notes. Like, here's his response to his aforementioned producer trying to help him improve the clarity and wording for one of the actress's lines.
No, I do. It's okay if we say it. It's okay.
Then why are you saying it's not okay if
because
you say
she's saying it
twice?
so many times that
So we
it's
can
like
only say it once?
no. It's just like it's over doing too much with a brand that we may or may not have a deal with. So
then we either can say it or we can't.
No, that's not.
Do you understand what she's saying?
It's
No, I don't need it.
just
Okay.
just the
But
second one. The line.
Let's get to acting notes and not like
word notes.
So in the end, Shane turned the movie into a 90-minute showcase of himself, exposing just how out of his depth he was. And with the chair documenting the process, it became even more evident that the film's failures were his to bear. Also, this is kind of a personal thing that has always just been super weird to me, but there's a point where Shane's character shaves his head, and Shane himself actually shaved his head for the scene, but afterwards, Shane kept the fact that he shaved his head this huge secret.
In Shane's case, he didn't really want to do a full test screening. Partly it had to do with he'd shaved his head and he didn't want people to know he shaved his head.
He wore a wig and acted like it was going to change the world, and he wore his hair shorter starting from this point. So like, because Shane had maintained the same hairstyle for 6 years and he thought this was the end of his YouTube career, it feels like he was trying to make that scene Shane Dawson the YouTuber dying and being reborn as Shane Dawson the filmmaker. And I'm sorry, but it's so corny, and it feels like the exact kind of cringy self-insert writing that you get eviscerated for in film school until you learn how to write with subtlety.
Shaving my head was definitely like graduation. It was kind of like, time to grow up, time to move on. You know, I'm 25 years old, I shouldn't have that haircut. I probably shouldn't have had that haircut for the last 5 years, to be honest. I mean, it was like the happiest day I've ever had. It was a stepping out of this young internet world that I've been a part of for the last 8 years. And I was happy, and I'm ready to move on and direct movies and still make internet videos, but hopefully it'll be okay that I have a shaved head. It'll be a little creepy, especially since my audience is pretty young.
Though I digress, he probably wasn't blacklisted for that specific scene. It has just bothered me for a decade, and I will never get the chance to talk about it. So let's get back to the point of this whole tangent. In one fell swoop, Shane was showcased as an ineffective writer, director, and actor, and then an entire show documented him as being incredibly difficult to work with and uncompromising to the point of hurting the integrity of the film. The world found out that he can't be trusted with a budget, he can't be trusted to lead a set, and he can't be trusted to make sacrifices for the good of the production. And on top of that, every connection he could have made to Hollywood, he instead turned into an enemy. And in all the time that I spent both learning about and working in the industry, the one universal piece of advice I would hear wherever I went is that people talk. And in an industry so filled with nepotism, if the door opens for you once and you mess it up, it probably won't open again. Because people would rather work with a decent talent who's incredibly reliable rather than an incredible talent who's a nightmare to work with.
Because I've been in the acting industry for so long, it's such a known thing of like, don't burn bridges in this industry of any sort. Like even people who are far less successful than you, like if you're the PA a couple years later, they are a producer suddenly. Like everyone knows in this industry who's a piece of shit.
But Shane showed the entire industry that in exchange for being incredibly difficult to work with, he will produce an incredibly unsuccessful product. And any chance of salvaging this damage was completely eliminated by his behavior after the movie's release. See, in the time since, Shane has maintained that he was a victim of the industry treating him unfairly.
Has the industry welcomed you with open arms? To kind of do stuff like that or no? Uphill battle?
I'm the most boring. I'm very laid back, and I'm very, I know what I want, but I'm fun to work with. There was a show that documented the making of my first movie called The Chair. They kind of made me look like really sad all the time, but in reality, it's just because I'm so low key all the time.
Yeah.
I'm just chill.
And in 2015, a year after Not Cool, he was still talking like he was on his way out of YouTube because Hollywood was still calling.
Luckily, I made the movie and I won the reality show that was, the movie competition or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So that gave me a little bit of that opened up a lot of doors for people taking me seriously. I sold the show to NBC last year, so that opened up some doors, and hopefully now the book will do well and open up some more. I think when I'm 30, which is 4 years from now, I'm going to start toning back or scaling back the videos and hopefully do another movie next year and hopefully slowly transition into that.
And in that same interview, he was scoffing pretty heavily at the idea of someone being perpetually known as a YouTuber.
Do you think it's important that all YouTube stars move on from YouTube at one point?
Yes. It's sad to watch. It's when they're over it and you're watching a video and there's a gun to their head to do it. It's the most depressing. Like Fred, for example. Fred was over it. I mean, I know Lucas in real life.
Dude, he was over it.
So over it, and watching him do those videos as he has like armpit hair and chest hair, and he's like, I'm 5.
Yet, spoilers, 9 years later, that's exactly what Shane has become. He moved out of California and has not made any waves outside of YouTube. And while yes, in those 9 years, both YouTube's security as a platform and Shane's goals as a creative can have naturally changed, security money was never Shane's main reason for wanting to get off of YouTube, but I suppose that finally brings us to the current era of Shane Dawson. Though I should probably clarify what I mean when I say the current era, when his content has changed dramatically more than once in that time. You see, Shane's entire strategy for the first half of his YouTube career hinged on it being temporary, so being known on YouTube for saying all these awful things, none of that would matter once he left the platform. But that didn't happen. In fact, part of the reason that this video was so difficult to put together is that all of the content that I've talked about so far has been completely wiped from the internet, and I'm not joking. Every few months I tend to get curious and check the Shane Dawson TV channel, and every single time there is a different handful of videos that are public. Mostly they're his films and music videos, though most recently a few other videos have also been made public again. As for the Shane Dawson TV 2 channel, it was randomly renamed the Human Emoji without any explanation for a while, though I suspect he was toying with the idea of turning the channel into a network where other people can publish their content, kind of like the Fred channel. But it has since been wiped and was briefly used as a podcast clip channel before Shane started the new channel Shane 2 instead. And on his Shane channel, which eventually took over as his main, every video from before September of 2014 is gone, with the first video now being him apologizing for much of his offensive content.
And I've deleted a lot of videos over the last couple hours that I felt crossed the line too much, and I'm embarrassed. And I'm sad that I made those videos.
It's kind of hard to overstate how significant of a move this was, because for content creators, their back catalogs can be integral to their earnings.
What would happen if we were to create a new channel from the ground up, but it was so much of what was keeping the main channel alive was the library?
Yeah.
The library of content, people going back and watching all of our older videos was what made that business model work.
Especially for legacy creators, every video made acts as a piece of passive income, yet he still wiped hundreds of videos in 2020 because they would periodically resurface and cause controversy for him. But 2015, in my opinion, started a period of Shane just viewing YouTube as a way to make money while he wraps up his career there. The Shane Dawson TV channel was slowly retired as it turned into a showcase of Shane's projects that were high-budget videos aiming to be either artistic or viral, while the Shane channel fully embraced daily videos that required very little effort to produce. Not hating the grind, it's just objectively true. Because by this point, making multiple videos a week, if not daily, was considered the best practice on YouTube. But that requires a lot of work even if you want to do that. Never mind the fact that Shane had been openly losing interest in YouTube at this point. So Shane did what he does best. He took note of what was working for other creators and incorporated the best practices into his strategy. While shooting his movie, Shane started to take notes from MatPat, who had started inviting smaller creators to produce various series for the Game Theory channel. This allowed for a more consistent output without having to sacrifice the quality of the channel's main series, not to mention that these smaller creators would receive exposure and likely money. So Shane started inviting smaller creators to host series on the Shane channel to help it maintain its consistent upload schedule.
Hello, my name is Lexus Gzal, and welcome to Bomb.com. We talk about the things that are blowing up on the internet.
Hey guys, what's up? My name is Destry. Welcome back to What the F News.
So by 2015, Shane threw himself back into his daily vlogs. But as they kept going, Shane's content went from him doing these trends ironically to him becoming the exact thing he was afraid of. I mean, Shane went from making a movie to releasing esteemed videos like playing with the Wubble Bubble.
Except I'm not a kid. I'm a grown-up, and I'm playing with the Wubble.
But none of that really mattered. Shane knew how to be entertaining, he knew how to get people watching, and he knew how to keep up with a demanding production schedule. So in the years following 2015, Shane was more popular than ever, yet was the furthest thing from being a filmmaker.
That's right, I'm going to make a movie theater or my cat. I decided that for an entire 24 hours, I was going to be vegan. We're going to be reacting to more compilation videos of me just being a human piece of shit. But I am going to give you some back to school hacks that are going to hack your school.
To put it simply, he was trapped. And this is where Shane's strengths came in handy. He had the talent and following to keep things going strong, but started to experiment within the vlogging format in order to find a way to make it his own. When Good Mythical Morning took off, he made videos about food.
Today I'm going to be trying a bag full of Lunchables. Today I'm going to be trying foods from Dairy Queen. I know I do a lot of videos where I taste food and I go, oh, this is disgusting, and I throw it up. This time is going to be a lot different because I can tell you I got a box of donuts from someplace in LA.
When Mr. Beast and Casey Neistat were doing well, Shane made videos about spending money and luxury traveling.
We're going first class! Are you serious? Yeah. Get more excited. It was very expensive.
For our first class tour, should we put on our Gucci slides?
Yeah. In some ways, Shane was just going through the motions at this point, but was still finding incredible success. but then he stumbled across horror. See, for a long time on YouTube, a very popular form of vlogging was slapping a camera on a tripod so that the creator can provide entertainment, either by telling personal anecdotes or engaging in one of various trends. But some started to get more ambitious, instead using the same setup to comment on things they've observed, kind of like how you'd find on certain late night shows.
He makes it clear time and time again that he does not want to be filmed, and to that the dad says,
Go and take the camera with you.
No! I gotta vlog my life. You know that.
That's insane to me.
These videos came to be known as commentary and were quickly gaining traction in the mid-2010s.
Stop! God damn. This is what I'm talking about. Jake's not doing anything wrong. He's just so irritating.
So Shane started applying this format to topics generally considered creepy, like urban legends and conspiracy theories.
Sleep paralysis is a phenomenon where people are either falling asleep or just waking up and they aren't able to move. They can't speak, they can't react, they're literally stuck in their body. But their mind is working and they're awake, they can hear what's going on around them.
And these videos were noticeably successful thanks to Shane's skills as a storyteller, as well as the unique juxtaposition of his levity with the interesting but creepy nature of the topics.
Oh my god. I have seen that video a lot, and every time it gets worse. Oh my god. Book promo, not on purpose.
So as time went on, this style of content started to slowly make up more and more of Shane's total output. So in response, Shane started pushing these videos farther and farther, going out to document the topics on location, increasing his production value, and slowly raising the bar.
There's something going on.
See, Shane found himself in a pretty unique position. People generally loved him as a storyteller, but not as a writer. They would rather see him tell a story about his past instead of turn it into a short film or sketch. And it kind of makes a lot of sense. By this point, the culture on YouTube was shifting away from edgy shock value humor, and that was Shane's bread and butter. So with all of these factors combined, he had an epiphany.
For the last, 10 years, my thought process was like, oh, I need to get off of YouTube. I need to, this is just, I'm gonna make movies and TV and this and that. And then I kind of came to the conclusion that like, oh no, like, like YouTube is really cool and people actually are starting to respect it more, and like, I should just make I would make on TV or movies on my channel. So that's kind of what I've been doing. It's a lot more work and a lot more money and stuff, but I'm actually like really proud of it now. Like a year ago, I don't know if I would have said I was that proud of like eating pizza on camera. It was fun.
Once again, Shane reading which way the winds were going saved him. Because by 2018, vlogging had all but died out. Simply put, viewers were starting to hold content to a higher standard. Production values kept increasing, and a whole new young generation of creators were hungry and starting to rise. So if you were trying to compete and stay relevant, it wouldn't be enough to follow trends or pump out daily content. People wanted videos worthy of their time. And by this point, a lot of creators who were once considered to be the faces of the platform started to see a decline in views. And yes, a lot of this is typical. Every creator has a shelf life and is destined to fall off, which, no, that's not a fact that keeps me up at night, why do you ask? But when you look at the content these vloggers were producing at this point, they weren't experimenting or innovating in the way Shane was. They were continuing to recycle the same formats while the views slowly declined. Because for a lot of creators who made it big in the early 2010s, their talent as entertainers was enough to carry their success, while Shane always had something to prove. I mean, I admit it feels weird to give Shane this much credit, but his history as a creator speaks for itself. Every time the platform started shifting, he would adapt accordingly. And by this point, YouTube finally became what Shane always needed, a great distributor for any kind of content. I mean, say what you will, but the algorithm has never been better at ensuring that quality content will find the right audience. So instead of creators having to make content that YouTube wanted, they could start focusing on making what people wanted to see. Not to mention that by this point, Shane had the contacts and resources to connect with all kinds of interesting people. So with all of these factors combined, it became clear that documentaries were the perfect way for Shane Dawson to finally get the respect he wanted.
One of the most requested stories from over the weekend, and that is Shane Dawson popped up back in the news because of his Mind of Jake Paul docuseries. And that's really not surprising given the subject matter and the number of people that have watched this thing. I mean, the episode 1 and 2 have gotten past 30 million views together.
You can tell that your production quality is definitely really impressive now. It feels like I'm watching a show.
Oh my god, that's the nicest thing anybody.
And like you doing it every day.
Yeah.
But as YouTube changed so much on a technical level, there was also a really big shift happening in society. See, by this point, YouTube was mainstream. So while it used to be fine for YouTube to act as the untamed Wild West of media, that wouldn't fly anymore. And due to factors that would take hours to explain, people were more willing to call out public figures for harmful behavior than ever before. Namely, this would include people digging into and resurfacing the pasts of famous people, which was especially troubling for Shane. Like, the entire basis of his content strategy for years was to shock and offend. But one of his greatest strengths was also the very thing that made this trend absolutely damning for Shane. You see, most legacy creators would just have to apologize for jokes that relied on being cheaply offensive. But since these creators were typically fairly young and had matured their content in the time since, they could generally move forward and even poke fun at their past ignorance.
Wait, hold on. We can't say that one, remember? Why? That's a gay slur now. We can't get away with saying that anymore. Right. Let me just do that one again. That sounded so gay. What are you, a girl?
Ian, calling someone a girl is not an insult.
But like I said, in true Shane Dawson fashion, he had taken this idea to the extreme. Instead of just settling on jokes that were shocking, Shane had an entire ledger of really questionable interactions with his young fans.
How old is you anyway?
13.
You 13, okay.
I don't buy it.
3, 2.
Okay, I think I missed.
And Lucy, I checked my statistics and I have a lot of child molesters watching, so can you please eat a cocktail weenie? Do it slow.
Not to mention that Shane would often make statements that insinuated disgusting behavior on his part with no hint at these being ironic.
No, but this child was probably 6 years old. First of all, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but like, she's like sexy.
You're disgusting.
I know, listen, we've talked about
No,
pedophilia
this
before.
is Shane, like, do not say this.
Here's my justification for pedophilia.
I can't.
Okay, first of all, let me just say, touching children or anything of that nature is terrible and you should not do it.
But
people have fetishes about, you know, everything. And there's websites on the internet where they can look at that weird, creepy shit and off to it. Okay, fine, everybody do your thing. So why is it when somebody looks at Google's like naked baby on Google and off to it, they can get arrested? I don't understand that. So I typed in naked baby. First of all, I don't understand why anybody would be turned on by that. But
that's the first good thing you said.
But they were sexy. I'm kidding.
I laid the cat down on her back and came all over the cat.
No, you didn't.
I was also like 19.
And while I think some of these stem from the underlying desperation of Shane's career, many labels have now been permanently attached to him. Labels that he has desperately been trying to shake.
I'm gonna start by saying I am not a f***ing pedophile. I, Shane Yaw, my real name, go on record saying I am not a f***ing pedophile.
So after a decade, Shane had finally cracked the code on how to go viral without relying on that, but now every time he did go viral, it led to his past resurfacing. This led to even Jada and Jane Smith, part of perhaps the biggest family in Hollywood, speaking out against him. Though on the content side, his documentaries have actually been pretty consistent for the last 5 years, amassing millions of views and often being considered trailblazing for YouTube. But on more than one occasion, these documentaries would go too far and stir controversy, such as when Shane insinuated that Jake Paul could be a sociopath despite lacking the qualifications to do so.
Do you know who Jake Paul is? Doing like a little documentary thing about whether or not he's a sociopath.
Or popularizing conspiracy theories that impact the real world but with too little evidence.
So they have everything. They literally have your whole phone.
That's not true. This is so irresponsible. When you type in your password, TikTok is not keylogging you and sending that to the server. Like, I think that this is so irresponsible, dude. It's just that, like, this is fear-mongering, and I think that that's irresponsible.
And because of how broad documentaries can be, Shane started to gain access to niches originally inaccessible to him, like beauty.
I have a lot of questions about like the beauty community in general. A lot of questions. Like, I want to like talk about all this stuff, but there's some stuff that he hasn't even told me. Because he's like, it's too much. But I want to know about the whole world.
Why is it so chaotic?
It's like the mafia.
Which initially served as a great way for Shane to rapidly expand his business even more.
Like actually me doing something, like a makeup thing?
There's your firstborn.
Wait, God!
Okay. Woo! Like the mini, we've seen her. She's iconic.
But this led to Shane getting involved with a conflict that was just so much bigger than anything he had dealt with by this point. Because unlike before, he was facing controversy for his actions in real time.
You're fake crying. You are fake crying. You are fake crying. That is not real. Oh my God. I was I have been, oh my gosh.
Though, of course, this led to, once again, Shane's past resurfacing, which finally ended up being the last nail in the coffin for Shane's image with the wider YouTube community. And since, his uploads have drastically slowed down, with Shane only releasing occasional documentaries or his old conspiracy theory format. Instead, Shane has been uploading to a secondary channel with a strategy that more closely resembles his vlogging days, only instead of vlogging, the focus is Shane's new podcast, which, much like vlogging, is easier to publish regularly with far better profit margins than his alternatives, though mixed in are occasional videos where Shane investigates rumors about various chain restaurants. In other words, while Shane has always been known for going bigger and bigger with his content, he's finally settling for avoiding as much attention as possible, and I think that's very much intentional. I mean, at this point, this man is a father, a husband, and, you know, really rich. Even if it takes multiple podcasts to equal one of his documentaries in terms of profit, they take way less work and won't make waves. Hell, I don't think most people even realize he has a podcast, and I think that's by design. Ironically, it makes more sense at this point for Shane to unlearn everything he knows by sticking to making content for his dedicated fans instead of trying to be a central part of YouTube culture. In other words, Shane is running the exact kind of bonus channel that hindered his success in the past, though I'm not here to play psychologist. I set out to discuss the key elements that gave Shane the staying power that most creators dream of. So I guess that just leaves my take on this. Simply put, I think Shane's greatest strengths in constantly adapting his content were his ability to observe, his willingness to take risks and invest in projects that weren't immediately successful, and, well, a fair amount of desperation. At first, it was desperation for him to break into Hollywood, but then it became desperation to make YouTube work, because that was his only option. But either way, when participating in the grind of content creation, it is really easy for creators to focus so much on what they're doing that they limit their ability to pick up on ideas for strategy that they wouldn't be able to come up with alone. While Shane was always keeping an eye on the ever-changing ways that creators were finding success and incorporated whatever best practices he picked up. And this kind of practice is something that many of the top creators still recommend making a habit of.
29 of the 30 streamers that I surveyed said they take stream ideas from other creators. 29 out of 30! So if you haven't already started looking at other creators and trying to take some elements of it, twisting it to making it your own, then you were just simply not doing it right.
Imagine a different world where you have 4 friends who are also equally grinding in something similar. Friend number 1 makes a mistake on Friday. He teaches the other 4 people. Friend number 2 makes a mistake the next week, teaches everyone. And then like you're all learning from each other's mistakes. You're all constantly studying 24/7 and downloading each other. Like after a year, you're like 2 years ahead of the guy who was just solo. It really does make a difference.
Shane was also willing to take risks and stick with them. For a lot of content creators, it's easy to find success and become paralyzed with fear. Success of any kind in content creation is nothing short of a miracle, so it's easy to fall into the trap of just sticking to what works out of fear of rocking the boat and ruining a good thing.
I felt that the success of the company hinged on continuing to play the song over and over again, and I was sick of that song.
But when Shane realized that a change was likely on the horizon for YouTube, he would start branching out. And more than once, this has included launching a second channel as an experiment so that if all else fails, his main source of income can keep going strong. But if that experiment does pay off, like with the Shane channel, then it can open all kinds of doors.
On one hand, did we anticipate having like 5 channels and all of them being very difficult and time intensive to produce? Yeah. No, I mean, no, we didn't really.
No.
Because we built them in a way of like, oh, well, when one goes, the next one rises.
Got it.
But then they all just lived on. And it's like, oh, well, this is great.
It was a great approach that served Shane really well for over a decade, but the main caveat is that image still matters. You can be brilliant at content strategy, but if enough people can't stomach you, then that'll only get you so far. Because saying and doing horrible things for content is a well-tested method for media success. But in most cases, you skyrocket to the ceiling of your potential very quickly and then stop growing. And then any attempts to cross over into the greater creator community is going to come with a lot of complications really quickly. This is why it's common to see creators who initially come up from this strategy eventually deploy a strong comeback campaign. Because once they've reached the limits of a no bad publicity mindset, the only way to expand is to convince those who have sworn off supporting them that they've changed. And while sometimes this can seem more genuine,
I am responsible for creating a lot of hurtful and damaging content on this channel. And I've also created a culture of apathy and I don't know, a lot of like cruelty as well.
Other times it's more likely to be a carefully crafted strategy.
But unlike usual, it involves Logan Paul, who's been on the straight and narrow over the past couple years and on kind of a redemption trail.
6 months ago, I investigated CryptoZoo, a scam created by Logan Paul and a team of criminals, which ultimately resulted in millions of dollars being stolen from fans.
So for YouTubers that plan on sticking around, it's important to come up with a strong content strategy while making an effort to stay relevant by adapting to an evolving culture. Add in a unique voice, and this can soar anyone to new heights, just like it did with Shane Dawson. And you know I'm speaking from experience when it comes to making a strong, relevant content strategy when I'm making an in-depth analysis about Shane fucking Dawson in 2024. Yeah, we're gonna follow this as one of those do as I say, not as I do kind of videos, aren't we?